The Isle doesn't need another apex, and Spinosaurus could make it even worse. The Isle has a lot of dinosaurs planned for Ivrima, and obviously that's a good thing. I don't think anybody is going to complain about getting more playables. But I think we're getting to the point where we need to ask ourselves what kind of dinosaurs the game actually needs right now. Because, I mean, we already have Rex, we already have Trike, and we already have Dino, and we're looking forward to even talking about more animals like Spinosaurus, Quetzalcoatlus, and Camarasaurus. Camara is it's kind of its own thing. Even if we had every apex in the game, Camara would still be kind of the oddball just because of how massive it is. But that's also part of my problem. We're adding all of these massive animals to the Isle, but what exactly is going to support them? Don't get me wrong, I want Spino, I want Quetz, I definitely want to see a Kamara walking around. I just think we need to fill out the middle first. And the problem isn't Apexes existing. I'm not saying they're bad for the Isle. They're just some of the most exciting dinosaurs in the game. There's a reason people are willing to spend hours growing a Rex or a Trike. Getting one fully grown is supposed to feel like an achievement. But the problem is what surrounds them. We've got a pretty good selection of smaller dinosaurs now. We've got things like Dryo, Hipsy, Trudon, Herrera, and Beppy. You've also got Omni and other small predators filling out the lower end. But once you start moving upwards, the roster gets thinner. We have Sarah, we have Carno, we have Maya, Dibble, and Aloe, and some others. But even then, Sarah and Carno are still considered smaller predators. But that's the part of the roster I think needs more attention, the mid-tier, because most of the ecosystem shouldn't be animals sitting at the very top or the very low. It needs to be balanced. Mid-tier should be the backbone of the game. Mid-tiers are probably some of the most important dinosaurs you can add to the game like the Isle. They're big enough to hunt and can fight, but they're still small enough to have predators themselves. That's what creates interesting interactions. A mid-tier carnivore might be hunting something smaller while also having to worry about something larger finding it. A medium-sized herbivore can defend itself against smaller predators, but seeing a Rex should be a serious threat. Small dinosaurs have something to fear. Mid-tiers have something to hunt. Larger mid-tiers have competition, and apexes have worthwhile prey. Right now, I just don't think we have enough steps in that ladder. I think large herbivores should be included in there. Adding more mid-tiers could also help spread out the population, give players more dinosaurs that are powerful and enjoyable without needing to play one of the biggest on the server. That's why we have a Rex problem. We've already also seen this with Aloe, and Aloe is a really good example of what I'm talking about. Now, Aloe has a whole nother set of issues right now that I'm not even going to get into because that's probably an entire video in itself, but when Aloe was added, it actually changed the ecosystem. There were tons of Dibbles and Mayas running around bullying everything. There were Trikes everywhere. And then suddenly there was another carnivore that was actually capable of putting pressure on those populations. They were very, very close in weight. Sure, Aloe doesn't have the best damage, but it's got really, really good bleed. And I think that's actually what made those herbivores more enjoyable. If you're playing a Dibble or a Maya, there should be something out there that you're genuinely afraid of. Aloe gave them another predator they actually had to pay attention to and help thin out some of those populations. That's the kind of addition I want to see more of. Speaking of that, Aloe also put strain on the Rex population because Aloe can actually hunt younger Rexes. Aloe doesn't have to replace Rex or become the strongest carnivore in the game. It just had to occupy its own part of the food chain. Maya and Dibble gained another predator. Small carnivores gained another competitor. Rex had another carnivore below it. One player affected several others by just filling a missing part of the ecosystem. Now we come to the biggest concern with adding more giant carnivores. What are they going to eat? Rex already struggles with this now. Heck, even herbivores struggle with finding food, the bigger ones. You're playing one of the largest predators in the game, so you need a lot of food. Sure, you can hunt smaller dinosaurs, but eventually you're going to be spending too much effort to catch something that barely puts a dent in your hunger, let alone your diets. Then we add another enormous carnivore like Spino. Now we've got another giant predator that needs a food supply. That's why adding mid-tiers and larger herbivores first actually helps the apexes. You're building their food source. Give Rex more worthwhile prey, give Aloe more prey in competition, give smaller carnivores more juveniles they can target. And then something like Spino arrives, there's actually an ecosystem waiting for it. And then there's Spinosaurus. Spino makes this especially interesting because it isn't necessarily just another Rex. It's potentially going to interact with both the terrestrial ecosystem and the waterways where Dino currently sits at the top. By this point, we most likely will have Barry, but who honestly really knows? And I've seen the argument that Spino could just eat Dino. Sure, but I don't think that solves the problem. Eventually, Dino players are going to adapt. If Spinos start dominating certain waterways, Dinos aren't just going to keep swimming there and dying. They'll learn to avoid them or simply just get pushed into other areas. And let's be real, Spinos are probably going to hang around hotspots like Delta, where there are plenty of players and food, so you could eventually end up with Spinos around the major hotspots and Dino moving to other waterways. And now Spino has another problem. Rex and Allo are already trying to survive off what food is available in those populated areas, and now you've introduced another massive carnivore competing for that same limited food. Sure, you're gonna see some killer battles. Rex versus Spino. Allo's picking off younger Spinos and Rexes. Dino fighting Spinos around the water. It's gonna be awesome. But it's not sustainable. Eventually, somebody needs something to eat. If most of the available food is just giant carnivores killing each other, we haven't created a healthier ecosystem. We haven't solved the problem, and we haven't got rid of the problem. All you did was add more competition at the top. And then we've got Quetz and Kamara. Quetz obviously isn't going to fill the exact same role as, say, like a Rex or a Spino, or heck, even an Allo. But you're still talking about another enormous playable that still needs an ecosystem around it. And then you have Kamarasaurus. Kamara is pretty much in its own category. Even surrounded by Rexes, Trikes, and Spinos, you're still going to stand out because of its size. But Kamara also brings up another problem. Food isn't only an issue for carnivores. Trikes and Stegos already struggle keeping themselves fed, especially when you've got multiple of them feeding in the exact same patrol zone or migration zone. And then now you're talking about adding Kamara, an animal several times their size. You know how much that thing's going to eat. Look at how much Trike has to eat just to get half a stomach. Kamara is almost 2 Trikes put together. If we're adding animals on that scale, the environment also needs to scale with them. We need enough vegetation and worthwhile food sources, heck, even bigger food sources, because multiple tiers can, fend off of one food source. So we can actually support these massive herbivores. Otherwise, Kamara would just create the herbivore version of the same problem we're talking about with Rex and Spino, which has already started becoming a problem because Rex can barely even feed itself now. The same thing goes to Trike. Just imagine when like Shant or anything else that's bigger than Trike come in the game. It'll eventually look amazing to have these giant animals walking around Gateway, but the ecosystem has to actually feed them. And then I've even seen it with other players are bringing this up too. I've seen mention of apex populations and wanting more interactions involving the middle of the roster instead of just consistently running into the same handful of huge animals. That's part of why we also see unofficial community servers using population control in the first place, just so you see diversity. And even then, there are some dinosaurs that are rarely even played with population control on. I've even seen people argue the opposite. Some players want more large carnivores because they want something else putting pressure on animals like Rex or Dino. And I understand that argument, but Allo is a good example of why the answer doesn't always need to be another apex. You can change the population balance by adding something in the middle. Otherwise, you risk trying to solve apex overpopulation by just adding another apex. That animal will then become extremely popular, and we've just moved the problem to another animal. What I think Evrima needs needs to fill the gaps. They need to give us more medium-sized herbivores, more medium-sized carnivores, more large herbivores. Give Rex more things worth hunting. Give Allo more competition. Give smaller carnivores more animals they can realistically target. Give herbivore players more choices. And make sure the environment can actually feed the animals you're adding. Because adding a good mid-tier doesn't only benefit the person playing it. It becomes prey for something larger, competition for something its own size, and juveniles become prey for completely different animals. Allo showed us that. More apexes will be awesome. Eventually. And that's really the point. I'm not against Spino. I'm not against Quetz. I'm definitely not against Kamara. I want all of these animals eventually Watching Spino and Rex encounters are gonna be insane. Seeing Dino suddenly dealing with another massive semi-aquatic predator could completely change certain areas of Gateway. And seeing Kamara walking around making some of these other massive dinosaurs look small is gonna be ridiculous. I want that. I just don't think we need to rush there. The giant dinosaurs are only as interesting as the ecosystem surrounding them. Spinosaurus isn't the problem. Adding Spino to the ecosystem that isn't ready to support another predator could be. The Isle doesn't have an apex problem because of Rex, Trike, or Dino. The ecosystem just needs to grow. It just needs to grow. Before we can keep expanding the very top of that roster, we need to add filling to the cake. Before we can make the cake taller, we need to add more. More mid-tiers, more large herbivores, more prey, more competition, more food for the giant herbivores. We've already seen what adding something like aloe can do to the populations around it. Now, imagine several more dinosaurs completely filling different niches. Build that ecosystem first, then give us Spino, then give us Squits. Same thing goes as Kamara. Give us the other apexes. But those animals will be a hell of a lot more interesting when there's actually an ecosystem underneath them to dominate. Thank you for watching this video. I'm sorry for all the stuttering I've done, but I'm back finally.